And now moving on to the final session of the day, I'd like to call on stage the panelists. Put your hands together and welcoming Mr. Babu, IAS, CEO, Arogyasri Trust. Vishal K. Dev, IAS, Commissioner, Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation, Bhubaneswar. Mr. Somil Nagpal, Health Specialist, Health Nutrition and Population, South Asia Region, the World Bank. Dr. Santosh Babu, IAS Managing Director, Electronics Corporation of Tamil Nadu. And Dr. Aruna Sharma, IAS Principal Secretary, Madhya Pradesh. May I please request the panel of speakers to please step onto this dais. And now to chair the session, let us all welcome Mr. David L. Elwood, the Senior Advisor, Global Health and Technology, USA, who will conduct the proceedings of this session. Over to you, sir. I repeat, the panelists of the last session, I request you all to please come on the stage. I repeat the names: Mr. Babu, Vishal K. Dev, Somil Nagpal, Dr. Santosh Babu, and Dr. Aruna Sharma.
While we're waiting for the panelists, let me just comment that in my experience in a couple of years of focusing on mHealth around the world, the people that really make it happen are the people who run state and local governments. And the panelists that we have today represent this state and states close to it. So I think we can look forward to having them talk about the real world. Often people welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Vishal Dev. Yes, Santosh. I am Babu Ahmed.
So what we'll hear is the real world issues that confront governments as they try to have these systems deployed. And I believe we're starting with Mr. Babu. So, yes.
So you have internet on this thing?
No, I have wireless. You have to connect the wireless to it.
So because we do, also otherwise there's wireless internet on that laptop.
No,
so
I want to do it from this laptop.
okay. Need the wireless password. Wireless password. Wireless password. HICC wireless password. I'll just connect it.
Yeah.
So we use internet like internet explorer or wireless internet.
Internet Explorer. I think I had to.
Oh, you have to try this thing.
Sorry for the delay. I think this happens every time when we speak about IT. I am here to speak about a scheme which is covering around 70 million people of this state, Andhra Pradesh, which we started on a very modest manner, scaled up exactly or just because of IT. It has come to a stage now that you remove IT from this scheme, it fails, or it fails that day. It has grown, from around 20 lakh people's coverage to around 70 million people coverage as of now. Now, before going into the online systems and the methodology that we adopted in running this scheme, I would like to explain key aspects of this scheme. As anywhere else, health was a major issue in Andhra Pradesh too. We had 75% of the people who were either selling their assets or borrowing to assess quality health care. Now, this situation led to a very difficult scenario wherein large number of farmer suicides and others took place. It reached a peak in 2004. And at the same time, the government which was there, the chief minister, who was a doctor by qualification, he took up this initiative and told us three things. A scheme which covers almost all the people on a saturation approach, which is done on a cashless manner, and quality of care. These three things have to be achieved in the quickest possible time. And that was the challenge. So we didn't have many success stories anywhere in the world. Wherever we looked at, we had certain failures that we saw. So we adopted a methodology, something called as a PPP mode, wherein the trust was formed with the chief minister as the chairman, and the insurance companies were selected on a year-to-year basis, on a competitive bidding basis. And we have the network hospitals, both from the private and the government sector, who is handling this, and the entire set of district administration and health workers were selected. In fact, the Arogya Mitras were selected for the primary health centers, and who will be the facilitators and who will be handholding the patients from them. I would like to make it clear here that any insurance-based mechanism or health financing-based mechanism, works on the principle of exclusion. We wanted to make it more inclusive in terms. So we have to go to the people, identify those who are in need, and then extend the same thing to them. And to achieve that, when we are dealing with around 30,000 patients in a day, putting in technology was a key, and so we adopted in-house, we designed a workflow which is linking from the village till the hospitals, and then the patients are taken care. The EMRs are maintained. Roughly we have now 4.3 million people's EMRs in the system. That is how it is being managed. It is extending 2 lakh rupees coverage for a family, and our premium now works out to around 450 rupees per family in a year. We are giving 2 lakh rupees coverage. We conduct health camps, in a week. A hospital has to do a health camp at a place told by us. And the complete disease load, which we are identifying in these health camps, are putting into a database. And we identify the disease incidents across the rural areas and try to improve the scheme on a continuous basis. So far we have done around 25,000 health camps, in which around 4.4 million people were screened with their database existing in the system. And around 25,000 people were treated as outpatients, and 25 lakh people, and 11 lakh people were treated as inpatients. And we will be shortly crossing the 10 lakh treatments. We are only 4 years old now. And this is done by giving complete choice to the patient. He can choose a hospital where he has to go. And that's an informed choice. So if you have to give an informed choice daily to around 15,000 patients, it has to be backed up by an online system. In fact, we are working as a centralized reception center too. So these are the non-negotiables in the scheme. We have carefully selected the procedures. We are not duplicating the existing mechanisms of delivery. We are giving choice to the patient for selection. You can see that 45% of the people are coming through health camps. And by linking them to the referral system through a call center, the implementation methodology, including the database and the stakeholders who are going to deal. So if a patient is coming to the hospital, his registration takes place, his EMRs flow across the net to doctors other than the treating doctor. And these doctors establish the indications again online and give approvals. And that is how we are preventing the concept of moral hazard involved in any such large-scale health insurance schemes. We have around 5,000 people working for this scheme, including doctors, field operation team, Arogya Mitras, etc. The responsibilities of the hospitals have been clearly outlined. Now we have a lot of enthusiasm from almost all the hospitals across the state. In fact, we have set certain standards in the sense that from the expertise and infrastructure angle, they have to have certain minimum standards, which they have to again show to us online, and it is done on a transparent first in, first out manner. The moment an application is registered, inspections are conducted, and they are empaneled. And this is done in a transparent manner so that everyone should know that once if they have to get empaneled, they have to set on to these standards. You can see the enthusiasm shown. In fact, we are also taking disciplinary actions against the hospitals depending upon any deviations from the guidelines. And we concentrate on the certain areas where health camps are required. For example, tribal areas. In certain periods of time in a year, we concentrate on tribal areas so that their needs are met. You can see the call center which is working. We have around 140-seater call center with 285 people working around the clock. And these people are actually acting as facilitators between the patients and the hospitals. So a patient who was handholded from a village, when he comes to a hospital, there also we have an Arogya Mitra sitting with the network system to take care of him. The idea was to cut the bureaucracy wherever a patient is coming in. It is very difficult for anyone to get into an insurance scheme. There is a lot of documentation, there is a lot of bureaucracy involved in it. We wanted to cut it across everywhere. And that is how we achieved through this system. Now, any such change management tool which is put in a large scale requires training. So we have trained around 10,000 people across the hospitals in order to get into this kind of working environment. Now you can see the modules which are working for this particular scheme in a workflow. I call it as a workflow rather than a website. Now this workflow includes the records, the identification records, the empanelment aspects, the health camp data, the registrations, pre-authorizations, and we secure this data, to deal with EMRs of 4.5 million people. Security is one of the prime concern. So we use all the security concepts in IT, including, biometrics, digital signature, etc. And our data center is also highly secure from external attacks and other things. The solution highlights are it is completely paperless. It can be assessed from anywhere and it is transparent. What the hospitals are doing we can see, and what we are doing the hospitals can see. So I would say this is the first scheme in the health sector which has made the processing of the cases transparent across the stakeholders. Normally in an insurance scheme, when hospitals submit the claims, the processings are not seen or observed, and corrective measures cannot be taken in time. Now this has helped us in achieving extending the cash or the cash flow, or making the cash flow very quick. Now a hospital submits a claim, within 7 days we are able to pay, and in fact now even within 24 hours we are able to pay. Now this cash flow is ensured in a first in first out basis. Nobody can pick and choose a file. So we are keeping away all the other aspects which may come into such kind of financial transactions, so that it is live, it is transparent, and it is real time. Without ICT, this scheme would not have been scaled up to this level, and I would not have been speaking to you. We have used a combination of proprietary and open resources in order to make the IT cost at within the permissible levels. In fact, with IT and the manpower involved in it, the administrative cost of this scheme is only 5%. With 5% administrative cost, and the remaining 95% goes to the claims directly to the patients, to the hospitals. The reason is we are working on a methodology which is in fact an agile methodology. Normally when you talk about IT systems in government, there is a tendency to go for the waterfall or spiral model, wherein an assessment of the requirements are done, we bring in certain development, then put it into production, and then look at it only 1 year after that. Now that kind of a system may fail in between. So if a change management system, including an IT-based system, is put in, every day we have to look in how it is going to respond. What is the response that it is getting in the field, and we have to try to improve. Now that is the agile methodology of development. Now this may lead to it may demand a lot of manpower or man hours from the persons who are leading it. But definitely there is no better choice than that. You will have to work hard in order to put in this. You can see our architecture when we started with 36 hospitals, and in 4 locations was this, a very small architecture, but now we stand at here. In fact, we have put in service intelligence tools, which is unheard in this kind of industry. Normally it is put in the business spectrum, but we have customized the business intelligence tool into a service intelligence mechanism so that any outliers, any deviations are caught before it could happen. Now, in a health system, or a health scheme, we cannot do any post-mortem. It may be too late. So our doctors have to be alerted with various statistics, various outliers and other things. This is achieved through this methodology. And we are working on the MVC architecture common for an online-based system. You can see the usage, how the numbers grow. The concurrent users at the peak time is around 2,500 in this. Anytime you see there are 2,500 users logged into the system. And we have to ensure the speed, the dynamism, etc. So that could be done with a proper combination of all these things. Today, 200 GB of electronic medical records are transacted in a day. And the entire thing falls into a central database. And it is available across the network hospitals now and across the time. Now today, the poor person in Andhra Pradesh have got a privilege. Today he come to a hospital after 1.5 years or 2 years or 5 years, he go to any hospital in the system. His electronic medical records are preserved. And this is what the doctors and the physicians, all of them require. And that is achieved through this system, in a very dynamic manner. We also have made the complete office transformation system or transaction system automated. There are no physical files in our office. It is also parallelly done. You can see around 3,48,000 transactions we have taken place, and there is a file management system, etc. The outbound and the inbound call centers have been properly oriented. I am just rushing through. There are a lot of technology involved in this scheme. You can see the productivity of the scheme in terms of 65% of the people whom we have covered till today morning are less than 45 years of age. In fact, the disease spectrum is also, it is very varied, and we are finding in rural areas so much of issues which were hitherto unheard of. The growth which we are doing, this is a month-wise procedures that we have done. In fact, this growth has been achieved primarily because of IT. Now, when the growth is happening in terms of numbers, the cost is coming down. Per average cost is coming down. So we are in a position to cover more procedures, with the same cost or a little bit of additions. This could be achieved because of the database that we are having, and we could command the prices from the insurers because of this. We are seeing disease trends stabilizing in certain areas, whereas it is growing up in certain areas and coming down in certain areas. So it's a varied of things that is happening, and the premium is also coming down per this thing. This particular scheme has actually given boost to so many PPP models. Now these are hemodialysis centers in government hospitals that we have established. When we ran the scheme, we found that in terms of hemodialysis, the infrastructure available is less. So we thought of utilizing the space available in the government hospitals. Private partners were got in and they were getting the money in time. There is sharing between the government hospital and the private partner. Similarly, we have put 111 machines in 11 medical colleges, hospitals, government hospitals in the state. And we are treating around 3,000 patients in these hemodialysis centers. In fact, this success story is now helping the government to come out with similar models in areas like cancer, trauma, etc. Some of the units. Many states have studied this scheme. Some of them have started replicated in a smaller scale. In fact, the WHO has recently appreciated the scheme, and they have sanctioned a 1.5 year of study to document the processes that has gone into running this scheme so that they spread the message across the globe. We also have a social auditing mechanism, and the critical success factors, I would say, divide it into two, three. One is the political and administrative commitment and the leadership and the usage of IT. Before I stop, I will just go online and show you what exactly is happening currently in the scheme. Now, if you see on the left side of the screen, you can see what has happened in the 24 hours, in the last 24 hours in the scheme. We have conducted around 30 health camps in which 5,403 patients were screened. Complete data is there inside. And around 6,010 patients came to the hospitals and registered themselves. And we gave approvals for 1,333 cases in the last 24 hours and worth 3.5 crores, all done online. I'll just go inside and show how a patient's record is managed, of course with the disclaimer that this is, I will not be giving the identity. Yeah, this is the digital signature that we use. Yeah, I'll just take the last 24-hour process cases. How many cases were processed in the last 24 hours? Yeah, you can look at your watches. It is now 5:48. In fact, 17:48. So the previous day, 17:48, 24 hours. We have processed around 11,901 cases. And that too today, even though today is a public holiday. This is a 24-hour job for us. You can see 11,000. That means in a minute we are processing around 17 cases. So various statuses of a case across the state, across the time period is available. You can see in the last 1 minute itself, there are around 17 cases processed. Now, if you can see the hospitals which are where it is happening. And if we can go into the case, you can see the socio-economic parameters of the case here. You can see the patient here, on the bed, and the complete aspects of the, the identity. Around 80 crore people's database is there. The moment the number is put in, the data comes out. So the identity is established. The complete hospital information like referral routes, admission notes, clinical notes every 24 hours, the pre-auth details, that means including the EMRs, all kind of records like angiograms, X-rays, ECGs, the blood test, all indications flow online. And it has been split in such a way that 18 people look at a case. Now, we are not overburdening a doctor with, so much of database so that he always sit in front of the computer and treats less. No, we have broken up into various, methods. And post-procedure, after approval, operation notes, the post-pre-auth note, the discharge summary, billing and the claim. Everything is established in a single line process in an assembly line fashion, and the money gets transacted in online. In fact, for the first time, we have established our server directly speaking to the server of a bank, so that, we establish direct transfer of funds, and the accounts also falls in electronically to every hospital every day and also within. Now, this is in nutshell what we are doing. In fact, this time is too short to talk about all the aspects of the scheme, but I have just mentioned how we are handling a case. And like this, around 30,000 cases we handle, including the referrals and the treatment in a day in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Now, this has been possible because of IT. And we are now we are in a position to scale up it further, that we reach universal coverage in the quickest possible time, thanks to IT. Thank you.
I think you need to come back to the United States with me. Our next speaker, Vishal Dev, is going to present a different perspective. One of the things that I think we need to keep in mind is that it's not all about health. depending on where you're sitting, if you're the patient, you're not a patient first, you're a person first. If you're a government, health isn't everything you do. IT isn't all about health. And so Mr. Dev, who has a very strong education in a variety of areas, is going to talk about the broader IT context in which these events occur.
All right. Thanks, David, and a very good evening to all of you. Before the session started, one of us was commenting if there are going to be more people on the stage than in front of the stage. But it's a very welcome change to see that so many of you are still there. I'm going to be talking about e-governance and about IT, using IT within a government setup, but with a different perspective. Most of the presentations which are a part of this session would talk about usage of IT in the healthcare sector. I was asked to kind of give a broad perspective about how IT is being used in different states, and particularly since I come from Odisha, which all of you know is one of the poorest states, one of the most backward states of the country, but which again has been doing very well for the last 10 years. I was told that the perspective of Odisha would kind of help people in understanding as to how governments could proceed forward as far as using IT for good governance goes. This is just to show where Odisha is located. I was in IT and investment promotion for a long time, about 5 years. And while talking to many foreign delegates, the question of where exactly is Odisha came quite often, and I made it a permanent feature of all my presentations, since I knew that there would be foreign delegates here. Just a very brief background about Odisha. You all know it's a very old civilization dating to about 3,000 years back. Also, one of the most poorest and backward states. We have roughly about 35% of our population below the poverty line, which is one of the highest in the state, in the country. Odisha is the 10th largest state, has a population of about 42 million, spread over 30 districts and 314 blocks and tehsils. The overall literacy rate is 63%, and Odisha is one of the richest states in the country in terms of mineral resources. We have roughly about 32% of the iron ore, about 24% of the coal of the country, which I'm told is enough to generate 100,000 megawatts of electricity for the next 200 years. 50% of the bauxite and practically almost all the deposits of nickel and chromite that you have in the country. We adopted a value addition policy for industrialization about 10 years ago, and that value addition policy, which said that we will not allow pure export of our ores, but we would like people to come and set up plants here in the state, has brought about a huge change. We are in the top 3 states in the country in terms of investments in hand, roughly to the tune of about $120 billion, primarily in iron and steel, power, aluminium, and obviously infrastructure. During the last decade, the growth rate, the average growth rate of Odisha has been more than 8.5%, which again is one of the highest in the country. And the rate of growth in the per capita income of Odisha is again one of the highest in the country. IT sector has witnessed a major boom. Again, during the last 6-7 years, we are the only state as of now technically to have the big 4 of the Indian IT. There are a number of other big projects coming up. We have been one of the fastest growing states in terms of software exports in the country. Last year we did about 13,500 million rupees worth of software exports, and we have a very large talent pool and a large pool of small and medium enterprises. Coming to e-governance in India, when we look at what has happened across these states in utilizing IT, we find that there are two distinct phases. One is the pre-National E-Governance Plan phase, and the other is a post-National E-Governance Plan phase. National E-Governance Plan was launched in 2004 by the Government of India, and it marks a watershed in the usage of IT for government processes and functions. If you look at the pre-NEGP phase, you would find that across different states in the country, it was IT, or using IT for governance, was very low on the priority of the government. The top level people were just not involved, be it the politicians, the ministers, or the bureaucrats. And whatever happened was isolated, individual driven. An officer was very keen on bringing about some reforms in the system, so he took up a small scale intervention. So isolated, individual driven, small scale interventions. And obviously, since these were all small scale and individual driven, there was never ever a statewide plan. And therefore, there was no budget available for e-governance or using IT for governance. Whatever happened was, again, very hardware and vendor driven. A vendor had a particular software or a particular hardware which was to be used, and they would go all out to sell it. And that is how most of those small interventions were built. A very compartmentalized approach. One didn't know what was happening in the other department. One department had applications built on one operating system or one application software. Another department was using a totally different operating system and application. At times, even within the departments, different applications were developed on different platforms. The result was no application talked to each other across departments or even within departments. And it was using IT, or e-governance as it is popularly called, was always looked at as being the work of the IT department and not of the other departments. And there was absolutely no availability of technically qualified manpower in the government. The concept of recruiting BTechs in computer science or electronics for e-governance work was just not there. With the National E-Governance Plan, all this changed. Not only did NEGP have a budget of about $5 billion to be spent over the next 5 years, it was launched in 2004, but it went about in a very systematic manner, looking at what is it that the country needs. We said that what is required is delivery of services to citizens at their doorsteps. That was the objective that NEGP had. So for that, it was decided that you have to have delivery points, which were designated as common service centers. You had to have a network which would connect all government offices and these common service centers. And you had to have a state data center, which would house all the data and all the applications. These were the three core components of NEGP, and on this core infrastructure, the GOI, Government of India, mandated that there are going to be mission mode projects or applications which will be conceptualized by respective state governments and implemented in a mission mode. And therefore, they were called mission mode projects. The Government of India also mandated that each state will have to have a state e-governance plan, work out what is the mechanism for implementing their e-governance plan, and have an e-governance roadmap as well. So I think NEGP was an idea whose time had come. And since we are in the city of Hyderabad, I must also add that the architects of the National E-Governance Plan were officers, mostly officers from the state of Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Chandrasekhar, who is now the Telecom Secretary, Mr. J. Satyanarayana, who was supposed to be with us in the session, along with a couple of other officers. This was the team which actually conceptualized the National E-Governance Plan and then went about implementing it. The vision of the National E-Governance Plan is that all government services should be accessible to the common man in his locality through a one-stop shop, which is an integrated service delivery center, ensuring efficiency, transparency, and reliability at affordable costs to meet his basic needs. As I explained earlier, three core components: the Common Service Center, to which people can go apply for various services, get various forms. All these Common Services Center are linked through the internet and through the statewide area network, which connects the different offices from the state level to the district level to the block level. And in the next phase, it's being extended to the Gram Panchayat level. And the state data center, which houses all applications, all the data. And finally, this infrastructure to be utilized by mission mode projects. I'll now come to how e-governance happened in Odisha. I mean, basically, what was the approach that was adopted by the state? In the pre-NEGP era also, we had created a network connecting all the 314 blocks in the state. And we were the only state to have created such a network. It was called GramSat. Basically an ISRO network. The speeds were slow, but it sufficed for the kind of requirement that we had at that time. We created a secretariat, central computing and training facility, a state-of-the-art facility wherein we identified that each department will have a chief information officer and a nodal officer for IT work. So 2 dedicated people in each department. We created a district information service council in each district under the chairmanship of the collector. And the basic approach that Odisha adopted was, we decided that we will strengthen our internal processes and functions within the departments, within different government agencies, which primarily is known as G2G services. We said we will focus on G2G services, and once we have the necessary infrastructure and the confidence that we get through implementing the G2G services, we will then move on to providing services to citizens, the G2C, and the services to businesses as well. And what we did is we identified people who had a flair for IT, who had a keen interest for IT and for doing innovative work, basically identifying champions, individuals as well as departments which were more focused, which were more keen on taking up these initiatives. And we then decided what project we shall take in each of these departments which were identified. Just to cover a very basic review of where we are as far as the core infrastructure of NEGP goes, the SWAN, the statewide area network, has more or less been completed. All district headquarters, all 314 blocks, and the horizontal points of presence are going to be completed by June this year. The common service centers, we were to set up 8,558 CSCs. Out of 100,000 CSCs which were meant for the whole country. As a part of NEGP, the Government of India had decided to set up 100,000 common service centers across the country, out of which Odisha share was 8,558. More than 5,000 have already been made operational. We have about 12 services. The usual services which are available through eSeva in the state of Andhra Pradesh are available, and by June, we are going to be adding another 10 services through the CSEs. The state data center is in the last phase of its implementation. It's going to be up and running by June 2011. So this is how the entire NEGP service delivery strategy looks like. There is a state portal, there is a state service delivery gateway, there are common service centers, there is SWAN, and there are various government offices which are connected. I'll now briefly touch upon what are the initiatives that we've taken in the state for delivering services to citizens or for strengthening our own systems. I will not be touching upon routine applications like transport department computerization, license computerization, vehicle registration, etc. But I'll cover applications which have come up in the last 3 or 4 years. Again, there has been a trend of implementation. The very first phase of e-governance in India started off with applications which were based on very routine functions. Let's say issue of a license, driving license, or issue of a gun license. The second phase saw a lot of applications built after process re-engineering. The first phase, there was no re-engineering. Whatever processes were being followed were computerized. The second phase saw a lot of work on process re-engineering and application development. And it was the third phase, in fact, which is going on, where we actually saw a lot of innovative applications coming up, out-of-the-box thinking. Applications which have been getting prizes for their creativity and innovation in delivering services to citizens. As far as human resource development goes, I'd like to touch upon 2 projects. One is called eShishu. This has been a very unique project in the sense that it created a database mapping each school with its teachers and with the students. I don't know how many of you are familiar with how the education system in a state works, but there are times when one does not know how many teachers are there in a particular school. There are times when a teacher is drawing his salary from one school but working in another school for the last 7, 8 years. The accurate list of students is not known. When we implemented this project, a lot of skeletons came out of the cupboard. We found that the number of students which each school was showing was highly exaggerated. The same child had been enrolled in 3 different schools. The teachers were on leave, drawing their salary for years together, but because of manual processes, nobody was aware of those. So it did cause a lot of embarrassment to the government when all these facts came out about showing excess number of students, etc. But it put in place a system wherein a school with its teachers, with the infrastructure that it has. If you go to the website, you will be able to see the classrooms as well, and the teachers and the students who study. So this was primarily eShishu, and along with it, under the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, all the 14 interventions, they were monitored using this. It's won a number of awards. I would not like to go into the details of that. This is the student academic management system. One is all of us have heard of JEE counseling or medical counseling, wherein you give a choice. This application is the first of its kind implemented anywhere in the country, wherein a similar concept of a counseling kind of a system has been implemented for +2 colleges, which is junior colleges, and higher education, which is BA or BCom or BSc courses. Normally it's done for engineering and medical. We have a system wherein a child, after passing 10th, if he wants to go to a junior school, which is +2, or to a degree college after 12, he fills up an application form, submits it, giving his choices of colleges, and it is done. This used to be a nightmare for students. When they didn't know which college they would get admission in, they had to apply to something like 100 colleges. One application submitted once, and you get to know in a totally transparent manner which college you're going to be admitted in. Okay, I think I'll have to run. Primarily for using IT for financial reforms, again, a number of applications. Commercial tax is an application which all of you are familiar with. I'd not like to go into the details. Treasury computerization. Again, managing the salary and benefits and the entire service life cycle. The service books of 600,000, 700,000 government employees. We have 500,000 government employees in Odisha. Is a huge challenge if you have to do it manually. This has taken care of that. E-procurement is an application which has been very, very successful. Goods, work, and services. All 3 are now being procured through an online system. We've done about 9,000 crore rupees worth of procurement using this system. It's won an award. And under the basic citizen services, this has been a very successful system which has now been adopted by the Government of India also across all its departments, primarily a single number for grievance lodging and grievance redressal across departments. So each department need not have its own grievance redressal mechanism. One number, you're directed to the concerned department, you lodge a complaint, and there are time-bound redressal of grievances. E-District is a project which is under implementation in 2 districts currently, primarily for complete computerization of the functioning of the district collectorates. Registration, I'm sure you're all aware of. This has been done in Andhra Pradesh also very successfully. On the urban services delivery, we started a project called e-municipality for 44 urban local bodies in Odisha last year. It's got 11 modules, out of which 5 have already been implemented. The idea is to make sure that people don't have to come to any office. Using online or the Jana Seva Kendras, they can get all services that any municipality provides. And governance reforms, again, e-dispatch is basically using IT for issue and dispatch of letters. Government has a problem of too many letters going missing too often, and it takes care of that. This was a project which came out of this large-scale industrialization which happened when I was managing director of the Industrial Infrastructure Development Corporation. Basically for computerizing the whole land acquisition process. I must tell you that land acquisition is a very long process. It takes about more than a year and a half. With this system, we have been able to bring it down to about 4 months. This is a system which draws the salary and provides other benefits to more than 500,000 employees. The group of these PAMIS, Rural Soft, this application has received the Prime Minister's Public Service Excellence Award last week. We are getting a grant of about 50 lakh rupees. I would like to touch upon this in a minute. Each block in every state actually implements about 69 different poverty alleviation schemes. What used to happen was each block used to send 69 different reports to the districts where they were compiled and then sent to the state headquarters. What these 2 applications put together have done is the physical and financial monitoring of all these 69 schemes is automated. The people at the Gram Panchayat level log into the system, update the details, and all those 69 schemes multiplied by 314 blocks multiplied by 30 districts, that entire paperwork has been eliminated. NREGS, I think I will stop here and we can take up the discussions later. Thank you so much for a very patient hearing.
Thank you. Our next speaker has quite a background. If you want to do healthcare, you need finance, so you got better figure out insurance. You better figure out medicine, so you better be a doctor. And knowing IT is a good thing. So the gentleman now at the World Bank has a great deal of experience in all of those. So Somil Nagpal.
So you want a normal mic or hand mic?
A very good evening to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my dear colleagues on the dais. It's a pleasure being here. And I'm going to speak about about 2 topics which are very close to my heart: IT in healthcare and health insurance. And speaking about them together in the sense of how information technology is changing the game and leading the way for the world through the experimentation, models and pilots in the Indian health insurance schemes, and in particular the government health insurance schemes, is something which is not only fascinating, but I think it's a matter of pride for all of us as Indians and as Indian healthcare professionals. technology in health insurance is being seen as a game changer for government health insurance schemes as also for private health insurance schemes by addressing two critical challenges which are important to make health insurance sustainable in terms of its recurring costs, in terms of how expensive it is to run a health insurance scheme. On one hand, and like many other industries, application of IT reduces transaction costs. And these transaction costs get reduced across the spectrum of health insurance functions. So whether it is enrollment or distribution or communications, claim processing, reporting, and so on. So the transaction costs go down as we automate more processes. So there's nothing new in that sense. But the second application of information technology, and that is where I think the bigger savings and the bigger cost multipliers lie, is by improving internal controls, by reducing frauds and leakages, by making better information available, by helping improve the design of health insurance schemes, and in general, creating a better information environment. The evolution of IT in the Indian health insurance sector are actually, it's actually a very compact 10-year period in which all this has happened. In 2001, when the first health insurance companies, the private health insurance companies came into the sector, we had the 4 public sector insurance companies selling one product called Mediclaim. For the last 15 years, they had been selling that product. But with new insurance companies also came a new entity called third-party administrators. And in the last 10 years, it's been a very different scale at which the industry has progressed. From one product, 4 companies, we now have more than 30 insurance companies selling more than 400 health insurance products in the Indian market. We have 30 TPAs, and each of them has embraced information technology in ways that has never happened before. The IRDA, the insurance regulator, created a working group on data. Many of you who are part of the organizing team of this event or are in the audience of this event were actually part of that working group, which led to the adoption of ICD-10, for example, as the first standard as far back as 2004. This wasn't adopted even in the United States as a standard until 2009. So some of the early interventions in health insurance IT, like the other early thing was the establishment of a central data repository, which is now called the Insurance Information Bureau, which today has over 100 million records on claims, members, and so on. So that's the scale at which the IT was applied in health insurance. A very rapid growth and change happened when mass government health insurance schemes came into the picture. We heard the very fascinating presentation by Babu earlier in this session. And schemes like what Mr. Babu runs are bringing in new expectations and capabilities. So there are smart cards, and how many of them? We've already consumed about 50 million smart cards in the Indian health insurance sector. We are one of the largest deployments of smart cards globally. So these smart cards enable offline authorizations. Most schemes want paperless claim submissions, including Arogyasri. They've created virtual private networks, closed user groups of mobiles for communications. They expect 100% cashless authorization so that the below poverty line beneficiaries don't have to pay and then seek a reimbursement, because that probably defeats the very purpose of the financial protection being offered to them. And they've brought from very specific data analytical applications. And this all is just the beginning of how these schemes are changing the game. We've already seen experiments with mobile phone payments, with handheld devices, with prepaid insurance kits, with prepaid pharmacy payment cards, e-vouchers for physician consultation, and so on. Some illustrations of how Indian health insurance sector is embracing IT, more as an illustration than as an exhaustive list. In terms of distribution, there are now web-based platforms. In private sector, you can buy your health insurance online. In the government sector, you can enroll for your health insurance through some of the schemes. There's extensive use of mobile phone technology for distribution or for payments or for identification or for communication through text messages. There's enrollment and ID has been a very prominent area where a lot of new applications have come into the health insurance space. The very fact I just mentioned about smart cards, more than 50 million smart cards have already been consumed in the Indian health insurance space itself. Biometrics are being used even when there are no smart cards with offline storage of the data. Biometrics are being captured at the back end in the servers and are being used. There are offline and online tools being used for ID and entitlement verification, so the hospital can go online or use a tool which helps him establish that this indeed is the person who is entitled to the health insurance and what are his eligibilities, and he can use electronic processes to get that confirmed. The game changer business intelligence, fraud control applications are improving their business intelligence. They are being able to detect outliers, being able to detect what does not fit the right patterns, and so able to give some early warning signs for any fraud or any what seems to be an odd kind of a utilization, so that can be investigated with more human intervention. There are data analytics being done which are leading to much better design improvements and product innovation in this space. Automation of processes has really reduced the time required and the cost of communication. There are connectivity solutions galore. We saw the example which Babu showed a short while back. There are web-enabled applications which can be used to submit claims, which can be used to check about beneficiary pre-authorizations and so on. People can track their claim status online. There are claim processing tools. There are electronic payments being done. Babu even gets to do his bank reconciliations between servers with no human intervention. So the payments made by his scheme and by his bank are reconciled overnight between servers. The deployment of IT for customer service and client relationship management, communicating with clients, and being able to use electronic health records. Some of the schemes are even planning to put these records on their either at the back end or on the chip, but with the right security so that only the authorized people can access them. Even the regulatory environment, so whether the regulator is for the private health sector or for the government schemes where the state governments are the regulators, it's leading to easier clearances and revisions in health insurance products. There may be soon decision support systems and rule-based engines which will support faster turnaround and product innovations. It will lead to a much more transparent availability of information and easy comparability for beneficiaries. Electronic off-site monitoring systems for the regulator, exception reporting mechanisms will provide timely regulatory inputs at low transaction costs to both the insurers and the regulators. And last but not the least, a lot is being done on standardization, the very backbone of automation in the health insurance industry. If we did not have standard codes for many things, we would not be able to compare data, we would not be able to run the kind of analytics we need to do. And so what has been done in the Indian context is something very unique, something which has not been tried in many other contexts. And again, I think we all need to be complimented and congratulated for being part of such path-breaking initiatives, which has been in the form of multi-stakeholder groups, bringing together the hospital industry, the insurance industry, the consumers, the regulators, the government agencies together, working on specific issues, trying to find common solutions around the table. Gone are the days when these diverse stakeholders met, it would be fireworks. When they now speak across the table, find sensible solutions which are balanced because of a balanced representation of stakeholders on the table. And so we have these multi-stakeholder groups coming up with consensus, standard guidelines and formats and definitions for many of the things which are very confusing, very diverse in the health insurance space otherwise. So now there are standard definitions which have been worked out for key terms, so that not every health insurance policy will define a physician in a different way, or a nurse in a different way, or a hospital in a different way. There are standard pre-authorization and claim forms for the industry, so that Not every hospital will have to stock the pre-authorization forms of 30 TPAs and 30 insurers, in which their employees could never understand or visually remember the forms, so the forms would not be complete or would not be as accurate. So the industry worked together to create a common form which should be out soon, but this form will help a visual impression because every single entity will use the same form. And then with this form come many other standard codes embedded in that form. Standard claim form, which is the next step after the pre-authorization form. The pre-authorization form is the flow between the hospital and the insurer or the TPA to get the permission to start treatment. And the second is the claim form, which is the next stage where the hospital is actually lodging the claim with the payer. And both these have been automated, and the process is going to help electronic claim submissions even in the private health insurance sector, and already it is happening across all government health insurance schemes. The standard list of excluded expenses so that there is no diversity across and different common hospital IDs are being worked on. Standard wording and coverage for critical illnesses are being worked on. There are new initiatives like standard billing codes where the whole industry will adopt a particular pattern of billing code so that the billing process can also be further automated, the analysis of bills can be further automated, and will improve the processing of payments and data analytics being done on the claims. The expected spin-off behind this entire process of standardization is to minimize confusion. We do not want to be confused by 60 different forms or 300 different definitions. We do not want to have subtle variabilities which we can't ever detect in fine print, so we are not able to compare between different offerings. So enhance comparability. And if all this information is standard across the industry, it leads to better transparency and fair practices. And finally, it yields very valuable data for the industry's development, and ultimately all this benefits the health insurance sector. So with that, thank you very much. Just a brief overview on what's happening in that space, a very exciting space, and if we have time, I'll be pleased to discuss this more. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker, Santosh Babu, also comes from an E background. He has had the first paperless office in Tamil Nadu in 2001 and created India's first rural BPO. Dr. Babu?
Good evening, friends. I think I'm acutely aware of the time constraint, so I think I'll not take more than 5 minutes. Yeah, just do it for me.
You need a mic. It's on.
Can you just tell me when it's 5 minutes? This about the health management information system. It's working? Hello. This is about the health management information system in government hospitals in Tamil Nadu. I would like to just take 5 minutes and finish it off and show you certain pictures because I think we are testing your patience a lot. Today the Honorable Minister spoke about the poor. And, if you were to look at this building, this building would have been constructed by somebody like him. But after the building is completed, he has no access. Somebody who lays a road, after the national highway is laid, he doesn't have money to buy a bicycle. He probably makes 4 square meals of meals for us, but he doesn't have for himself. This is the supreme irony of life. I don't know whether you've thought about it. I have thought about it. And probably these people are cross-subsidizing our happiness. And probably, many of our systems, IT systems, etc., should concentrate on how to get these last mile people out of poverty and on their legs, as it were. But certain sine qua non, and I'm an ambassador of this: sanitation, a toilet in each house, personal hygiene, education, public health measures. Many of these things cannot be supplanted by any IT initiative. It has to be told, done, and it has to be enforced. HMI is considered 2 things: health management system, information system, and hospital management system. I'll just take you through certain photographs. It had certain ICT initiatives, certain policy initiatives, and process initiatives. This application, this was developed by TCS. Dr. Sumant Raman is here. Actually, we wanted to show it live, how hospitals go live. It's a fantastic team. It's a World Bank project, TCS and us together. And a medical doctor has never been in the health department. My job as an MD LCOT and Director of E-Governance has been to provide support. That is what I've been doing. Actually, my boss, who was the IT secretary and earlier in the health department, did this, and currently Dr. Vijay Kumar is the PD of this project. Complete credit to the fantastic team that is done. It's a workflow system in hospitals. You say garbage in, garbage out. Probably not that, but it brings about massive changes. Now, the advantage here was that LCOT and, we had a state data center and LCOT data center ready. The TN span, 2007, we are completed. Now we are connecting 5,000 last mile locations. The primary health centers, employment exchanges. You tell it right up to the canal, we have connections for PWD. So all these things were done in the software itself. That is unique identifier for hospitals. All the standardizations and drug inventory, etc., to take care of all the aspects of the software so that, the doctors, everybody can be online. The change management, this is the toughest part, and people are talking about this. It goes without saying that, it took, the biggest culprits in this whole process was probably the doctors who would not come, who would try to find out. So somebody was talking about doctors not being able to become typists. If the President of America can become a typist, why not us? I think today when we take anybody into government, he or she should know typing, he should know certain, and a lot of mishaps have happened. Connectivity. This is the hugest problem we have in e-governance, anywhere. And as I do this, if I am live, if I don't have connectivity, there it goes. But now, here we found that, everything is working fine. And, we get SMSs on and off saying that this hospital is down, that hospital is down. Finally, when we find somebody who is very energy conscious, he goes and switches off the light or switches off the modem. He might be a peon, etc. So these are some of the mishaps which have happened. A lot of training has happened now to take care of this. A lot of process initiatives, and the department has undergone massive change. Stakeholder meetings, help desk setup, IT coordinators has been in place in each district. A lot of computer training has been provided through my organization. A lot of motivation. Then a lot of stuff. A lot of policy initiatives. In government, if you want to make a change, it comes through what is called a GO, government order. Without that, nothing happens. So a lot of government orders were issued, a lot of unnecessary processes were removed, a lot of GPR, government process re-engineering was done. So today we are where we are. Benefits for the population is real-time access to health data, and benefits for the healthcare system is huge, single point of entry. I'll just show you the pictures, and there's a huge amount of funding which has happened. I'm rushing through because of the lack of time. Right now, 42 hospitals, secondary care hospitals, 1,600 PHCs are totally online. And we are going up to 272 secondary care hospitals. Entire activity is online here. But, again, the question is about quality. Whether the doctor is doing a correct quality, whether he's giving a standard treatment protocol. All those things are probably not covered here. But what he does or she does is made online, so the data is available. You can see the analysis for, patients diagnosed, how many patients have upper respiratory infections, how many have myalgia, etc. You get to use this as epidemiological data, which can be used to prevent diseases, promote health, etc. This online usage itself is measured every month. Module-wise we measure the module of registration, lab, pharmacy, clinical, etc. The top 10 diagnosis, because of the format change, I think it's not there. Top 10 diagnosis, top 10 drugs issued, top 10 lab tests ordered, then how the different hospitals are doing in different districts. All these things are there. It's a huge amount of data that's coming in for the system to use that data. I think probably the biggest support that anybody, either primary health center data is what actually comes as a national data. So you can imagine if the data can be accurate as much as possible, I think that will serve our country better. I'll just take you through now, what is it? Levers the success of this thing is strong ownership and support from the top administration, right from the health minister downwards, supporting government orders, no data entry support. I think this is the biggest. Doctors do the data entry, the paramedics do the data entry, everybody else. There's no data entry personnel as such. Then SWAN connectivity data center, etc. It's a centralized web-based application, open source, phased implementation. Now, I just take you through these photographs, which will be more self-explanatory. The patient comes in, he gets what is called a patient index number. Basic data is fed in. The last 5 digits is important for him to remember, or if he can remember, his name itself is good enough. So, he's given a slip. With that, he goes to the doctor does everything online, including the diagnosis, including what the medicines he should take. Then he goes to the injection room if he wants an injection. In Tamil Nadu, I don't know, in other states also, everybody wants an injection. If you don't give an injection, you are not a good doctor. So, they go for the injection, the sister enters the data here. The pharmacy also, this is a huge problem for the pharmacist earlier. She had to write it down, then take the medicines, etc. Now the whole thing is done in a jiffy. In the ward also, the ward sister does everything online. The blood bank, everything is online. Now, what happens here is a complete patient record. Next time when I go as a patient, I don't need anything. I just need to walk in. Now, this is what I was talking about the National Health Service, where they have additional things, or the MRI, the X-rays, the ECGs, etc. of part of this is not there. So, a couple of things which I personally would want is, the nurses, they still keep writing and then take it to the system and type it. That's a very, online, offline process which I think we should not encourage. Why can't we provide PDAs? This is what I'm requesting Ms. Sumandaraman, Dr. Sumandaraman and my system. Why can't we provide PDAs for the VHNs? If you have seen the village health nurses, who are the primary collectors of data, if you have seen them in the morning, they are in excellent white sari and they'll be carrying around 8 to 10 registers. Dr. Ganapati will know. They'll be carrying it very enthusiastically in the morning, 8 o'clock, they'll go to 5 houses. 6th house, they're a bit tired. 7th house, they sit down, have a sip of tea. 8th, 10th house, they stop talking, call everybody and take the data. Now, this is because they have to carry for each different activity, different register. Why can't we provide a PDA from which you can use a USB and, connect to the system? Why can't we add X-rays and MRIs to this system? And I was thinking about connectivity in the morning, and you talked about NKN. Why can't we provide good connectivity? Right now, the TN1 connectivity is 32 Mbps at district level. Go to the, at the state level, go to the secretariat to 16 Mbps. When it comes to the collectorate, it's 8 Mbps. From there, copper goes and we get 2 Mbps. And when it's shared with the horizontal locations, the connectivity really drops. So here is a location, let's say a district headquarters hospital. Am I on time? District headquarters hospital, 2,000 patients come. 2,000 patients come. Now, if the connectivity is down even for a few minutes, and these photographs were taken by me on my mobile, they were very happy because things were happening. But the moment it slows down, everything, all havoc is thrown up. Now, this is where I think we all have to sit together, because connectivity is what's happening is RailTel is sitting on a huge amount of bandwidth. RailTel. Power Finance, or lots of people are sitting on bandwidth. Why can't bandwidth, just like spectrum, become a common property resource? Everybody pulls in and then takes it out. NKN is a great example where bandwidth is going to become a common property resource. But it's basically for research. I was just wondering, why can't it become mainstream? That is, government also takes. Because TN1 or SWAN, which the NEGP prefers, is basically a very superfluous exercise. We have spent 200 crores in Tamil Nadu. But right now we have 2 Mbps connectivity. When it goes to the primary health center, when it goes to the employment exchange, it comes down to 512 kbps, which is good, still good enough. But still I feel that, when we're talking about gigabytes, and Professor Raghavan, who is in the NKN, he once came to the Honorable CM and said, sir, you're all talking Mbps, talk Gbps. I think that should be the mantra. The connectivity, if we can improve drastically, that should bring about lots of services. And there I would like to say that, why can't government think about becoming world class? Government and world class looks like an oxymoron. But we can. I think that, why can't our government offices look like let's say Babu's office, or let's say like my office? Why can't we do things online, totally online, paperless? Why can't we clear files on your iPad? These are things which we are doing on a daily basis, not mainstreamed. I think it's time for government also to take a lot of cue from the private sector and do a lot of stuff, infuse ambience, attitude and technology in government. And our government offices, let's say my government GH, should look like Apollo Hospital. Why should it not look like? I just keep wondering, because we spend per capita more money than probably Apollo spends on maintenance. So there are institutional issues, there are policy issues, there are issues of visioning, etc., which we lack right now. And I think youngsters like Babu, and lots of us bureaucrats need that support from, let's say, civil society and everybody to take e-governance as a mainstream method where you don't see government, you feel government. You sit in front of a computer and the interface is not the government office or the government, hospital, of course, you have to come. But it's not the government office. You don't come to the government office. The interface is the web. Those are some of the dreams which many of us have. And I wish we all could do it in the next 2-3 years before, another 63 years pass and we have to fight for a freedom struggle against corruption, etc. The Lokpal bill also, it's basically a post-mortem. I've become a thief, you catch me, you hang me. Technology can prevent me from becoming a thief. That's what I personally feel. I feel that everywhere in government we need to infuse heavy doses of technology, bring in the best ambience and change governance for the better of this country. And let me thank the organizers, Apollo Hospital, Dr. Ganapati for giving me this opportunity. I'm sure what's happening in Andhra with what Mr. Babu is doing, and those are things which we need to have all over the states. We need to learn from every state. Some of these things which we have done in Tamil Nadu also probably is good. You could come to any of our 272 secondary care hospitals or 1,639 PHCs and you can see the entire activity non-paper or paperless. Wish you all the best. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Well said. Our last speaker, but certainly not the least, is Dr. Aruna Sharma, who has a strong background in the field. She has focused on convergence in resource convergence in planning, and her focus is on delivering this care, on access to care, specifically in rural India. So, Dr. Sharma, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My job is really tough, being the last speaker of the day, so I tried to make it as colorful and interesting as possible. Basically, you must have seen the talk given by my colleagues has been individual examples where they have improved the healthcare and health management systems. Now, even though we can talk of the private sectors or the private sector hospitals, but the maximum population which is interacting with the healthcare system lies in the public healthcare system at the government level. And that is where the challenge lies. And therefore, I have talked and focused upon it, basically on gaining access to the healthcare. And that is where it goes. So if you look at it, there is a big gap between demand and supply. And many a times we try to blame it, that this demand and supply is because of financial resources. And that is what I will be challenging as we move ahead. And the basic challenge is actually lying in the inter and intra-institutional coordination. When we are talking of healthcare, it is ranging right from nutrition to the preventive to the curative healthcare. And that requires a number of agencies which are playing their roles into the sector. So that is where, if you are looking after the lowest unit, you will have to go to the district, block, panchayat and village, if you really want to make it effective, and then see that how we can make it sustainable. Because today the government efforts are completely on the subsistence level. The basic minimum is getting provided. And that is where the challenge lies, is that can we graduate to make it a sustainable kind of an arrangement. So, the problems that we are having, there is no convergence, too much of warming up time. By the time a person joins, understands the whole policy, tries to execute, it's time to go. Now, Babu in Andhra is doing a brilliant job. I don't want his successor to demolish it. That is where the challenge lies. Then, the concept of seasonality has to come. Right time, in the whole calendar of the year, if you look at the government expenses, you will find that maximum of the expenses are getting placed between January to March. Now, healthcare cannot take place like that. If you are looking at the food security system, a person needs food every day. You can't have a fair price shop delivering after a gap of 4 months because the railway container was not available. Now, this kind of a ridiculous things needs to be monitored at different levels when we are moving ahead. Hence, now the challenges comes that if we mean the business, We have more than 2,000 schemes that are operating, and that is where the IT's role comes. No human mind, how brilliant it may be, cannot comprehend so many schemes and their nuances. Then, what is it coming to? One is reducing yourself to monitor the budget expenditure instead of the outcomes. And that is where the whole effective implementation plan is getting problematic. The outputs are not getting defined properly. Now, if you ask a correct question, you get a correct answer. If you are talking of a complete health care, then your outcome has to be defined. What do we mean by complete health care? It can't just be one touch and go kind of a method, which we keep on going, monitoring it. So, how do we do? How do we get into this fiscal discipline? How do we get into an outcome measurables? And how do we go into a zero tolerance kind of a methodology? So, this is the plethora of schemes. They bombard on the individuals from everywhere. Now, if you look at this women's health care, how is she getting bombarded? Too many agencies. You have a Women and Child Welfare Department which is supposed to take care of her nutrition, and 5.5 points of women health care, that is A&M, is overlapping with the health. Then you have a health care worker. Now there are two of them. One is ASHA, one is A&M. Again, there is one which is working on the sexually transmitted diseases. The nutrition is again getting overlapped between Women and Child Welfare Department as well as Food and Civil Supplies Department. The sexually transmitted diseases, it's completely like a parallel stream which is going and not touching up into the general healthcare system. So this kind of a system, the only answer lies with all of you, that is the IT tools, and that has been attempted in a number of places which I'll be exhibiting. So what is happening is, you are giving them all supply-based and demand-based, not exactly what they want. Now this is what is happening, that they want basic health care, but you are giving number of persons who are working. We are touching few of the things, but we are not providing actually what they want. So, you need a systematic tool, and that's what we call it as a convergence of services tool for this. And, like I said before, we don't want a personality-based approach. We don't want Mr. Babu being transferred and whole thing collapsing. Now, this is the kind of a money that is available. For health care, you have ranging from 400 to 800 crores of rupees per annum per district. Now, you are all people from the business houses. Just imagine a manager who has an assured flow of money of 400 crores per annum flowing into a district with an average population of 15 to 20 lakhs of rupees. With the listed outcomes, if you are failing, then it's only because there is a bad management. There cannot be any excuses. So it is not the lack of financial resources that what the government sector is suffering from, but this is where it is suffering from, and that is where you have to give the answers. So here, what was the IT tool used for? The IT tool was used for to put a full stop to plan for the individual schemes. What was planned for was the thrust activity. So if you are talking of a full health care, then it was split into two, that is your nutrition, your child health care, and your mother's health care, the man's health care, the elderly health care. Now, if you divide it into four, then what does it mean? It means a complete coordination of number of agencies, number of departments which are working. So this ICT tool enabled to list out immediately all the components, and these components were matched to the schemes, cutting across the departments, cutting across the watertight ministries, cutting across the various agencies that are working. So this enabled a planner to think holistically and use that 600, 700 crores for one target, that yes, this is what we mean business and this is how we want to give the results. Then we felt the need of having a graphic display. For graphic display at the district levels, what we found, there was too much of dependency on the IT experts like you. And that was not feasible. The need was to have a desktop kind of an operating system, because different levels of monitoring needs different parameters, different games. To give you an example, suppose we are talking of a child health care. Maybe at a village level, For every child, the data is needed as to the nutrition from the ICDS to midday meal to fair price shop to the health parameters, to its immunizations, to whether the mother was is anemic or not, etc., etc. But as you climb the ladder, there may be different things you want to match at different levels. Maybe suddenly at some level, an agency wants to match with the drinking water department, how the sanitation is taking place with the department. So this Gram Drishti tool enabled to translate your Excel file straight away into the map by the user himself. So you don't have to go into a different chamber where IT experts are sitting. This is a Windows-based kind of a software developed by IIT Bombay, and straight away your Excel file, because in government sector everybody has got used to having data on the Excel files. So you can choose parameters. So if you want to compare the kind of drinking water available, the kind of sanitation available, and waterborne diseases, and the nutrition level, and maybe you want to see the height, health of the child, anything you can choose, just those columns in the Excel file. This tool enables you to get a spatial display on the map immediately with a click of button. And that is the kind of ICT you developed, which enables to focus on the qualitative outcomes and quick spatial display methods. Then, of course, with that, it was used the different kind of groupings. Because in a government sector, there is another strange thing we work on. The grouping of villages is not coterminous in different departments. For a revenue department, an A, B, C, D, E makes a group for something. But for a health department, it may be B, C, D, E, F, which makes a group. And somebody third may be something else. So this also enables you to do the grouping of the villages as per your requirement with a simple transfer of the names, which again a user like me, who is not a software expert, but knows how to use the computers, can easily transfer it and make its own groupings for my personal use, and accordingly can get the computed data or computed visible display as we move ahead with it. So this is how the flow chart goes. You have a trust activity, you have components linked to the schemes, agency, and this enabled to make a district plan and allow it to have our traditional monitoring systems also. Because each department has to flow its data in its watertight compartment to its officers higher to him or her. So this, even though you work in a convergent concept, it allows you to split the data and throw it up in that way. And that is what made the difference. This is how it starts. What should be the thrust activity is a brainstorming session by the stakeholders, all stakeholders put together. And once they decide on it, the ICT tool throws up all the combinations that are possible, how they can use it. It's a combination of both top-down and bottom-up. So thrust activities can be anything, any of these you choose. Then you have these input formats. You can change the input formats. I'll just rush through it. And the outputs can be exactly what you want, cutting across the watertight compartments for the public healthcare system. And this has been used now by different departments, whether you are in an agriculture department or whether you are in a horticulture department or whether you are in any other department. This is a kind of a tool which is multi-purpose tool, need not be restricted to the healthcare system once invested. So that is the kind of opportunity it gives for them to improve their entire system of management of district administration. So these are some of the screens. I'll just skip through them as you move ahead. So it gives you a complete thing. And using this concept now, the resource convergence has been incorporated completely in the 11th plan document. The RCH2 was the first step which we took up to sort of bring it together. Then NRHM is also completely talking about how we converge it, but not completely done as yet. We have added on one more person and still the struggle is going on how to put them together. The UNDAF has also adopted it, that is the UN plan till 2012, has also gone ahead with it. And that is where it is important that substantial resources are there. It is very important, we can't afford to waste it. We are talking about the corruptions. But the corruption will only sort of drain out some of the money. But what is the money which is misutilized? Because we are not converging, we are not focusing, The left hand is not knowing what right hand is doing. So that needs to be improved by the assistance of the IT tools as we move ahead with it. So that is how the only answer lies, where from the vicious circle of poverty, bad health, not gaining access, failing to gain access, low parameters of health, we can shift to the virtuous circle of a good nutrition, good education, good health, good management, and excellent health care. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. The brainy professor tells me that brainy doctor tells me that we have time for one or two questions before the reception and party, which is going to happen next door. So, is there anybody in the audience? I can't really see. The professor from
Please
London.
announce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kamalini Ramdas. I'm a professor at London Business School. I have a question for Dr. Santosh Babu. First of all, I want to say I found your presentation fascinating. And one of the things you mentioned was that doctors are doing data entry. And so I'm thinking doctors are the most expensive resource in the healthcare system. And I would think that a doctor should only do those things that only a doctor can do, which is diagnose and prescribe, and perhaps, as Dirk de Mortier had mentioned earlier, build that relationship with patients, which builds the trust with the doctor. So I'm very curious as to why you have doctors doing data entry.
Thank you, ma'am. If you don't allow him to do data entry, he will go and do private practice. No, actually, there's no great data entry involved. Okay. At the basic level, the data entry is all done. He has to it's all pull down menu. See, today we have, the computer is so user friendly, it's a graphic user interface. Even child knows if you click this will happen. We don't know what happens behind, but this will happen. So everything is clickable. So if you have the antibiotics clickable, if he has got 10 antibiotics, the problem I found was that somebody is clicking metformin, or so let's say an antibiotic, amphetamine, sorry, I'm also, I just forgot. There's no standard treatment protocol which is happening, which is what intrigues me. I mean, if he is clicking something, the doctor in the next room is clicking something else. See, what should come out of all this data is that we should have certain standard treatment protocols, which are important. The data entry per se is nothing. He takes actually some 3-4 seconds, not more than 4 seconds for the data entry. He clicks, 3 clicks and it's all done. There's not a lot of data entry. The data entry basically is at the nurse level, because she is doing the case sheets and all. So case sheets and all is in paper, which she again writes and goes. That's why I'm asking whether there can be a small PDA. Dr. Sumant, it could have been a beautiful small 1,000 rupee PDA where you can have only these things to be entered. Takes a pin and puts it in. So it will be so beautiful to have a totally paperless kind of administration. Now we have both together. That's the most unfortunate thing. Doctors don't. If President Obama can do data entry, all of us should do. Thank you.
Can I make an observation, Mr. David?
Please.
I think this was a fascinating session for the simple reason that most of us in India, in the non-governmental sector outside the government, have an erroneous perception that the government is in Jurassic Park era. Now, I'll just give you 2 examples which made some of us have such a judgment. I once got a communication asking me to erase an initial and initial the erasure. My father got a communication from the pension paymaster asking him to produce a certificate that he was alive the previous year. This sort of thing is what works on our mind. But I think this is fascinating, and I want to congratulate every one of you. And I think we should, if you can do it in one district, in one center, why can't we do this for the 630 districts of the country? So I really just wanted to compliment you. I know how difficult it is to get these things done in government, and I think it's fantastic what you're doing. And we must clear the perception in the public that government is Jurassic Park. I think you're extremely modern, and I just wanted to congratulate you.
I think that is a great note to...
Sir, can I just add? I will not overspeak. Just want to inform you that today in Tamil Nadu, a citizen can sit at home, ask for 10 certificates, type it out, take a digitally signed certificate at home. You don't need to visit any government office. If this can be done, it can be done anywhere. I just want to inform you that these things are happening not only in Tamil Nadu, it's happening across the country. And what Babu and all is doing is very high end.
One of the most exciting moments of my life came earlier this year when I renewed my driver's license sitting at my desk, and they sent me, that's all I had to do was go online. But gentleman from Tata.
Yeah, just an observation, I think, to what was asked here earlier. One of the key issues which came up when we took up this project in Tamil Nadu was actually the sustainability of the whole project. And when we were talking about a system that on an average each hospital has about 8 doctors, the smaller hospitals, the bigger hospitals have 20 to 30, 40 doctors. So the question of employing data entry operators or additional staff didn't arise. And I think one of the key success factors that the government, and this is something that came from the government side very clearly, no data entry operators will be hired across the board. And I think today we really need to congratulate them, because I honestly do not know of any other state where we've been able to achieve this level of doctors entering data into medical records. Today, on an average, the system generates about 25,000 electronic records, patient records a day entered by the doctors. So the only thing is the cost also needs to be kept in mind. We have done an implementation in another state where there are data entry operators who've been used, and that has had issues in scaling from the 31 hospitals that we did to all the way across the state, simply because costs are really, really exorbitant.
Thank you. Well, on that note, we're going to end the session. I'd like to thank all the panelists. I'd like to thank particularly the audience who stuck it out for a very long day. And Professor Ganapathy wants to make one comment.
Yeah, just an announcement, housekeeping. Before the mementos are distributed, I think all of you have been wonderful. I just realized it was 7 p.m. You came here at 8 a.m. That is 11 hours. I hope it has been an intellectual feast. I'm not very sure about it. I do apologize for the lack of time given in audience interaction. We hope tomorrow morning we are going to start the session at 8:29, not at 8:30, irrespective of whether anybody is in the audience or not. I'm sure all of you are going to be here by 8:29 so that we will have a very good audience interaction. And now I think it's only fair that after this tremendous amount of intellectual feast, I'm very glad to inform you that just the next door we were talking of bandwidth, we were talking of gigabytes of bandwidth, and we have a band today which have called themselves bandwidth. So they're not only going to entertain you, but there's going to be a lot of, we are going to literally allow you or give you an opportunity to get into high spirits as well. So please do join us for the cocktails and dinner as soon as the mementos are distributed. And thank you once again. There are not many conferences. I have been attending conferences for the last 36 years, and I really do not think there are too many conferences where I find almost 150 people sitting here at 7 p.m. after having come here at 8:30 a.m. And I think that speaks for itself. Thank you so much.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I request the chairperson of this session to give away the mementos to the panel of speakers. Let's give them a huge round of applause, everyone.
Just announce that it's in the next one. Where is the dinner?
And may I please invite Mr. Sid Ahuja, the Vice President, JV Alcatel Lucent Ventures, to please come onto the dais and felicitate our chairperson with a memento. Ladies and gentlemen, the memento is being presented to our chairperson. Let us all give a huge round of applause one more time. All of us have had an experience of an intellectual feast. But now, like Mr. Ganpathy said, it's time for some musical extravaganza. Introducing the physically bandwidth. Yes, the band, the fabulous music band is awaiting you right in Hall 1 and 2. It'll be followed by cocktails and dinner. Please join us. Thank you all once again for being a part of today's conference, and we are looking forward to see you tomorrow as well, as you definitely wouldn't want to miss out on the valedictory by our Honorable Governor of Andhra Pradesh. Have a wonderful evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pooja Ghalke, your MC for today. Thank you. Good night. Thank you all the dignitaries on the stage.